Hi, this is Kevin Trainer. Welcome to part two of my introduction to the assignment that we're doing, which is to do the Django Girls tutorial. And as we come into part two, we've gotten to the deploy step. Okay, so if you look on the table of contents, we started way up here at introduction. We've gone through installation, Django installation. We've put a couple things together. We've learned how to work with the Django models, Django admin, and we're ready to deploy. Okay. Now, there are a couple of tricks to the deploy side that I decided it would be good to have a little bit of a video on, so that's how we're doing it. And also in our class, the deploy step is how we're going to put our work in a state where the instructor can access it and grade it. Okay, so I want to make sure you go through all the parts according to our naming conventions and all of that kind of stuff. Okay, now first of all, you're going to need an account at Python Anywhere. Okay, now where's that? Oh, that's pretty far down on the deploy step, but since it's kind of important to have an account, and I want to make sure you get it. There's a place called Python Anywhere. It's a nice little specialized internet service provider where you can get an account, and you can do a lot of things, including just practice your Python. But the other thing is that you can deploy a Django-based web application there. And of course, you can deploy a whole lot of them if you're willing to pay for an account. But if you want to do it for free, you're allowed to deploy one application. So we're going to have this be our kind of showcase in our class. And whatever we're currently showcasing and would like to show to the instructor and would like to show to our colleagues, we're going to have that be our installed application at Python Anywhere. But first we're going to need a Python Anywhere account. Okay, so let's get a new screen and go to pythonanywhere.com. As you can see, I've already been there, so I'm going to stop typing. So at pythonanywhere.com, what has happened to me is I'm already logged in on my browser. Okay, so that looks interesting. So you, of course, are not going to be logged in. And you're going to be, kind of somewhere like here, right? So you're going to say that you want an account, you want a free account, and what I'd like you to do, you have to pick a user ID, okay? And right now we're using this for the course I'm teaching at UWM. So if you look at my account, I'm using my user ID, which is of course my email ID at UWM. And of course I'm going to be teaching this course later in the year at the University of Illinois. And when I do that, I'll probably use my user ID at the University of Illinois. It's going to help if I can easily find your account at Python Anywhere. So what I recommend is that you use the same user ID at Python Anywhere that you have at the university where you're taking the course. Now, that's not going to be possible for everybody because there'll be collisions. But that's the idea that I'd like you to get started with. Okay, so create a free account, okay, and then you're able to log into it. Here I'm able to log into mine. Trainer K is the ID that I use at UWM. Okay, and here I'm at the dashboard, and your dashboard won't look quite so busy because you won't have been here before. So for instance, I've got some recent files. I've actually deleted all these in anticipation of this video. Okay, and there's one thing that you have to do in order to give me the access that I need to grade your work. You need to set me up. You need to nominate me as my teacher. This is interesting special feature of Python Anywhere is this ability of students to share access to their machines with their teacher. Well, how do you do that? Well, once you're logged into your account, go up to this blue navigation bar and click on Account. And then there are navigation tabs here: Upgrade, Downgrade Account, Email and Security, Teacher. Click on Teacher, and it says Nominate your teacher and enter your teacher's username. So for the current semester at UWM, well, I'm Trainer K. So I'm going to nominate myself as my teacher, and I was very pleased to see that that actually works. So I do this. Oh, this is good. It says autodidacts are encouraged but not officially recognized. So is it saying that I can't do it? No, it's not going to allow me to do it. Well, it's going to allow you to do it. Funny, it allowed me to do it yesterday, but that could have been from my other account. Okay, so this is how you do it. All right. So when you're done with this operation, you'll have pretty much an empty environment here at Python Anywhere. You'll have a free account based upon a username that'll probably be the same as your username at the university. And you'll have come and nominated me as the teacher, and for that, at least in the current semester, I'm Trainer K. All right? All right, so we're not going to officially do that because that didn't work today. I practiced it. I practiced it a few days ago, and I was able to get it to work. So perhaps I did it from my other ID. Okay, so that's enough for Python Anywhere for now. Okay, so let's go back and look at the deploy stuff. Now, the beginning of the deploy is that we finally get our code under version control with Git. And I've given you access to a lot of resources for Git, okay? And there's some instructions here about how to create a repository, a local repository on your machine for your code at the command line. Okay, and you can certainly do that. All right. The other thing that you can do, and I recommend that you follow their instructions. Okay. Now, having done that, will you be able to continue, to open it at in PyCharm? Yeah, you can. All right. Could you use PyCharm to to turn the project into a local repository? Yeah, you could. All right. And I think what I did on mine was to do it at the command line, and then when I reopened the project with PyCharm, it thought a little bit and it realized that it now was under version control. Okay. Now, here's what I want to show you. What if we have the following situation? What if we, oh, I'm sorry. Let's go a little bit further. So we create a local repository here, and we push your code to GitHub. Okay? So it kind of shows you how to do that. When I did mine, even though I'm a bit bucket guy, I put my first one here on GitHub. Why? Well, I just wanted to follow the instructions in the tutorial, and they favor GitHub. Okay, so the repository, the remote repository for my Django Girls tutorial is on GitHub, and that's fine if you put it there. If you found a way to put it onto Bitbucket, well, that's fine too. So the instructions here are how to push a copy of your local repository up to GitHub and have that be the remote repository. Okay. I just want to point out that you can look at a project. Let's say you have a project that looks like this. Let's take a look at my local copy of this project. Okay, so I'm going to go to my file system and going to go to my username. I'm on my Mac here, obviously. And they have us calling the files, the top level directory, my first blog. And so that's what it's called here somewhere. Where's my first blog? Should be here somewhere. Oh, it's not called my first blog because I called the repository something else on here. So I take that back. So it's called Django Girls here. And I think it's under PyCharm projects. That's where it is. So mine's under PyCharm projects. It's under Django Girls. Okay. That's because when I put it on here, that's what I called it. All right. So if we look in here, I've turned on the option where you can see the invisible files, the ones that are typically hidden. Okay. How do they do that? I Googled it. Okay. But you can see that there's a Git folder and there's a Git Ignore document. So this the Django Girls directory is acting as a local repository. Okay, and if I open it in PyCharm, so let me fire up PyCharm. Takes its time a little bit. Okay, that's on another monitor. Let me pull it onto this one. Okay, and you can see, oh yeah, there's the directory name, Django Girls. So let's say, okay, let's open that. Okay, and that opened on another monitor. So let me pull that on here. Okay, there it is. Okay, that's good. All right. Now, what if I wanted to do version control stuff in PyCharm? Well, I can, right? So while I'm in the project, I can go up to the menu and click on VCS, Version Control System. And a really popular thing to use is this VCS operations pop-up, which is a Control V. Okay. And you can do whatever you want. You can do a commit. You can do a revert. You can do a push. Right? So you can do all that kind of stuff once you're under version control. The other thing that you could do, if you want to, is you can go down here on the bottom and go over to the left and look at version control. Okay. And once you do that, then there are some tabs. But for instance, if you click on log, you can see a log of all of the changes that have gone on. Now, these don't have to be changes that we made in PyCharm. Okay, this is a Git repository. So however we did it, if we did it at the command line, okay, if we did it from within PyCharm, if we had a commit, well, then it's going to be on the log. Okay? So you can do your version control stuff here in PyCharm. You can also, if you want to work at the command line, go to the terminal down here. Okay, and you are in your directory. So you can do command line things for Git. So you could say Git status. And it should tell you a bunch of things about your local Git repository. So even within PyCharm, you can pretty easily revert to command line Git. Okay, now for me, I'm a little bit. I favor doing my Git stuff on source tree. Why? Because I think I was first kind of facile with Git on source tree. So what I often do is I go to source tree, and I would like to be able to see this repository on source tree. So here, of course, I'm using the Mac version of source tree. And I look here, and I've got a whole bunch of repositories, but I don't have the Django girls one. So how could I add that? Okay. And what I really want to do is I want to add a local repository and have it be visible and manipulatable in the source tree product. Okay. So how would I do that? Well, I would go up. I think I can just click on this part and say I want a new, and I can say add existing local repository. Okay. And where is it? Well, I happen to know that under my ID and under PyCharm projects is the one that I want, the one that I called Django girls. And I open that. And you can see that Django girls is up here. Okay, you can see it has one modified file. That's one of the files that has to do with the PyCharm project infrastructure. But if I double click on this, I'm going to get the project. And as you can see, if I'm on the history tab, here are all the stuff. Here's all the stuff that I've done. And actually what I just did is I just changed one of the entries in a settings.py, which when I go to deploy at Python Anywhere, it turns out that I have a couple problems. And I fixed those, but what I wanted to make sure is that you guys could see me having the problems and solving them, so that if you have problems, you'll know how to do it. So what I've done is I've reintroduced the problems into my code. All right? Okay, good. So let's close all these. Okay, and let's go back to our tutorial, which is right here. And we are at the point. Oh, I want to point out one more thing about the work that you do when you're turning your directory with your code into a Git repository. Okay. one of the things that they have you do is to create a .git ignore file. Now, unless you put the right entries in the operating system, these dot files are hidden. But this is a list of the things that are not going to be put under version control. Okay, and one of them is your virtual environment file. Okay, that's fine. Another one is the database. So this db.sqlite3, this is the database. Okay, so this means that every place that we deploy this, we're not going to get a copy of the development database. Okay, if in fact we didn't have this in here, when we deploy to Python anywhere, we're going to have a copy of the database that we had on our own computer. Well, that's not typically what you want. What you typically want is to have some test data, some playing around test data that you've created on your developer machine. But then when you install on the production server, as we're going to do now, well, you want a brand new database. And of course, our migration is going to set up the database. We're not going to migrate the data. Okay, and having db.sqlite3 on this Git Ignore list is what keeps us from accidentally migrating the data onto the production server. Okay, so what do we do here? So we pushed our code to GitHub, and when we deploy, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to set up our production machine on Python Anywhere, and then we are going to clone the repository, the remote repository on the production machine, the Python Anywhere virtual machine that we have. Okay, so we're going to pull down the code from the repository. That's how we deploy. This is a pretty common use case. So I'm just going to show you how I do it, because there are a few things that are maybe just a shade out of date here. So let me get back to let's go back to Python Anywhere and make sure I'm logged in. So pythonanywhere.com. I'm logged in as trainer1. That's the wrong person, so let me log out. Oh, by the way, if I'm trainer1, that's my user ID at the University of Illinois, I can go to account, and I can come down here and click on teacher, and I can say that I want trainer K to be my teacher. That's what I got to work the other day. See? That works fine. So that's what you're going to be doing. All right, but I don't want to be trainer 1. I want to be trainer K. So I'll log in here. And I'm not going to save that for right now. And here we are. So when we come in, we're in the dashboard. And the first thing we want to do is we want to create a console so that we can work at the command line. So if we click on consoles, okay, and if you look at the instructions here, they point us at this link for bash. We want a bash console. And as you can see, we're using Python 3.6. That's just what we want. So let's click on bash. And it's going to open up a new console. A pretty little window there. And it didn't take too long to get going. Okay. And the first thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to clone the Git repository. Okay. So it turns out that my Git repository on GitHub is actually called myfirstblog.git. So it's really very close to what we have in the instructions here. So I'm just going to copy and paste the instructions. I do a Control C, working on the other monitor when I copied. But now I'm gonna do a a Command V on my Mac, and paste that in. So this is pretty close to what we're looking for. Now, I think I am. I put it on a. I put it on an account I have at GitHub that's under the ID K trainer. Okay, so what you have to remember is to use the username that you actually used at GitHub. So mine's ktrainer, and let's look at this. So let's enter that, and it's going to clone it. So now what we've done is we've taken this remote repository, we've cloned it on the Python Anywhere machine, and so now we have another local repository right here. And if we do an ls, we'll see that there is a directory called myfirstblog, and then we can do a cd for myfirstblog, change directory, myfirstblog, and we can do an ls here. And the directories I have in here are blog, Django Girls, and my site. So that's fine. Okay, so I want to go back up in the directory list. So you can say cd ... to go to the parent directory, ls. It's not quite at my first blog yet. I think this is where we were when we started, though. Yeah. There's a readme text, and then there's a my first blog. So that's where we were when we were following the directions. Okay, so we pulled it down. That's good. And then they have you do a tree command. So they have you do tree, my first blog. And I've got to tell you that tree as a command is not installed on all Linux systems. It is installed here at Python Anywhere. But if you were trying to do this, for instance, on your own machine, or you were trying to do this on some other potential production server, you might have to install tree first. Okay, and to do that, you'd have to Google how to do it. You do that with the Python installer pip. No, actually you don't, because it's not a Python command. It's an operating system command. So you do that with whatever the package installer is for your operating system. Okay, so that was the next thing they asked us to do, and that's working fine. And they want us to use, for a virtual environment, they want us to use virtual env. Okay, and we're not going to fool around with installing Anaconda on this machine. We're just gonna stick with what the Django girls are telling us to do. Okay, so the first thing it says is to change the directory to my first blog. So I'm going to come down here and do that. Okay. There it is. CD my first blog. We did that before. Okay. And you can see the directory name showing in the prompt, which is good. And to create a virtual environment, we're going to use the program virtualenv. Okay. And we are going to say --python equal Python 3.6. And then the name that we're going to give it to it is myvenv. Okay, my virtual environment, myvenv. And you might find in the instructions that I did find a place where myvenv was not spelled consistently, but I think that myvenv is the version that you want to use all the time. Okay, so it's doing a little setup. It's actually creating the virtual environment for us. Okay, that looks good. And what does it tell us to do next? Is to activate that virtual environment. So it's saying that you do that with source space myvenv, that's a directory name, bin, that's a subdirectory name, activate, that's a command name. Okay, and we see over on the left side here in parens myvenv. Okay, so we actually are in that virtual environment. That's good. And the next thing that we want to know, we want to do is we want to install the version of Django that we're relying on, which is Django 1.11. So we're going to use the Python installer pip. So pip install, okay, Django, and we say equal. Oh, instead of just equal, we're going to use tilde equal. Tilde being the uppercase symbol just under the escape key on your typical PC keyboard. And then we're going to say version 1.11.0. So what does tilde equal mean? Well, we've already been through this before, but it means I want the latest version of 1.11. It has to be at least as recent as 1.11.0, but it can't be higher than 1.11 point something, so it can't be 1.12. Okay, so let's press return, and it's going to do some thinking. And it's still doing some thinking. So here we're reaching out across the net and pulling in these installation packages. So it collects the packages and then it installs them. And one of the things you can see in the kind of log text we're getting on the console is it found version 1.11.9, which today is the most up-to-date version of 1.11 that there is. So that's just what we wanted to get. So one of the things that you're seeing here is that whenever you deploy your application, you're going to have to create an environment for it at the deployed site. And typically you're going to do that inside of a virtual environment of some kind. In this case, we're using a virtual env, you could use the tools that we're using on our own computer, which are based on Anaconda. And there's a high compatibility between those two. So, okay, we're back. We've got Django installed. That's terrific. Okay. And what do we want to do? Well, now we want to migrate the database. Okay. And remember, are we migrating the data? No, we're not migrating the data because we didn't get the data over here. Okay, that wasn't under version control. But we are going to migrate the database, which means at this point that we're going to actually create the database here on the production server. Okay. And what do we do this while we say Python? Because we want to run manage py. Okay, that does a lot of our sort of utility work for us. And then we're going to give it the command migrate. Mange py wasn't what I wanted. So I'm going to use the up arrow and correct my spelling to manage py, not mange py. And that's going to work better. And it's really building the database for us. Okay. So having done this, we're going to have a dp.SQLite3. But it's going to be a new one that was created here on the production server. And it's going to have the same schema. Okay, because we just made that happen with our migration, but it's not going to have the data from our development server. Okay, and then the next thing we need to do is we need to create a super user because we're relying on that to do administration and to authorize users in our application. Okay, because we're kind of cheating on the authorization side in this Django Girls app. We use the built-in authorization system from the admin package. And we don't really build a lot of ourselves, a lot of authorization stuff in a custom way. So the instructions say that we're going to run Python manage py again. And we're going to say create superuser, all one word. Okay. It's going to suggest a username for us. For this, I kind of like this one, trainer K. Okay. Now, because we're using this in order to authorize the application, both you and I are going to need it in order to test your production application on this production server. Okay. We both are going to have to know what the password is. So we're going to have an agreed to password. Okay. So email address, I'm just going to say trainerk at uwm.edu. And the password, because we're at, because I'm teaching this at SOAS, the School of Information Studies, we're going to call it Secret SOAS, all lowercase. Secret SOAS, SOIS. And type it again. Secret SOAS. Okay. So having an insecure password is probably generally a bad idea. But when we're trying to test things together on a test version of a production server, and we're using this kind of feature, well, there's not much that can be done. Okay. All right, we've got that done. So now we've got everything pretty well installed. Now what we need to do is we need to set up the web app, which is configuration. So if we're following our instructions, we're going to hit the back button on our browser to get out of this bash console. Okay, and we're not saying that we're closing it. It's going to run in the background. Okay. So we come back. Since this is a web app, it says we have no consoles, but let's refresh it. There's my console. Okay. If I wanted to go back into it, I just have to click. Okay. But I don't have a web app installed yet. Let's go up to web. Okay, in this top navigation bar, let's click on web. And as you can see, I have no web apps. Okay. Now, Python Anywhere is good enough to allow you to run as many as you want. You can run one for free for about 3 months. We'll find a way to extend ours. You can run one for free for about 3 months. And if you want more, well, then you're going to have to pay them some cash. Okay, we're only going to need one. So let's click on this, add new web app. Okay. And it wants to know what your web app's domain name is. And it says, well, if you pay for it, we can give you a special domain name. Otherwise, it's going to be yourid.pcanywhere.com. Well, that's just perfect for us. That's what we want. So no paying, just take the default. Next. Okay. And now we have to start to follow the instructions. Okay. And the first thing here is that select a Python web framework. The Django girls are living kind of dangerously. They don't pick the prepackaged ones. You might think, well, we'll go for the Django one, but no, they want to show you how to do it with a virtual environment, which means we have to do manual configuration. So we select manual configuration, okay, and then within that, okay, we have to pick Python 3.6 because that's what we're using. Python 3.6. And it says it's going to import a default version of this Whisky configuration file. And that's okay because we're going to replace it. So, okay, next. And it's doing a little building and configuring behind the scenes, so we have to give it a little bit of time. Okay. So it says this is only going to be good till April 30th. That's almost the end. So we'll do something in order to get us into May when our class ends. Exactly what we're going to do, I haven't figured out yet, but we will. We're definitely not going to need to pay. Okay. So we go down here, and this is where things are maybe a little different between the page that you're actually going to see here now in January 2018 and the one that's we've got the screenshot of in the on the tutorial, the Django Girls tutorial deploy page. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do here is that we're going to select the virtual environment. Okay, and that's all the way down under virtual env. Enter path to virtual env if desired. Yeah, we do. Click on that. Okay. And what's ours called? Well, ours is called /home/rid/myvenv. So let's type that in. In my case, /home/trainerk/myvenv. Here's where having spelled it consistently is going to be helpful. So now we just click the check mark. And it didn't find it there. Oh, that's not good. Okay, so where... Oh, it should be under my first blog. Okay, sorry. My bad. Trainer K / my first blog. My -first -blog / myvenv. Let's see if we can find that. Click on the check mark. Yeah, it found that. Okay, that's good. So we have to identify the virtual environment that we want it to fire up. Okay. And then the next thing that we're going to need to do is we're going to configure the Whisky file. Now, Whisky is a protocol for Python-based application servers, and it has a standard configuration file. We haven't learned about that in the Django Girls tutorial yet. That's just part of the magic. But what they've done is that they've given us a copy that we can place in, and it's going to do the job for us. Actually, two things in mine are going to be broken. So, but this is what we're going to do. So here on my the page for my web server configuration, I've got a link for Whisky configuration file. Yeah, that's the one I want to change. Okay. All right, so now there's a whole bunch of code here, 125 lines of code. And if you look in our on our tutorial page, we've got more like 25 lines of code. Okay, so I'm going to click on this. I'm going to do a Command A because I'm on my Mac to select it all, and a delete key. All right, so now it's empty. And now I'm just going to go and highlight all the code on my web page up to the top, and do a Command C, which of course these would be control commands on your Windows machine. And I'm going to come back here and I'm going to paste it in with Control V. And this is supposed to have everything in it that we want. It's going to turn out that we're going to need, in my case, to come back and point at something slightly different. Okay, whether that's going to be true for you or not, we'll see. And we can't forget to save. Okay, so now we've saved. Okay, that's good. Okay, so now there is another thing here that says that enter the path to your web app source code. And they don't really have you configure that in the Django Girls tutorial, but I like to do that. So I'm going to click on this source code and click on that link. And it seems to be saying that we're just going to point to the name of the web application, which of course is not my site. It's my first blog. So what I've been putting in here is /home/ my username trainer K / my -first -blog. And I'm not absolutely sure that's doing it the right way, but I think it is. Oh, sorry. I forgot to put a K on the end of my user ID. So let's try that. It seems to be happy with that. Okay. So they give us some debugging tips, but before that they say, okay, we're ready to reload and run. So where's the reload? Well, it's up at the top of the page. It's a convenient place where you can go and reload. Now, why do we have the reload? Well, Python production Django production servers are different than these production servers are different than the development server. It is not going to automatically reload your code if you change the code. Well, how could you change the code? Well, you could change the code by either changing it here on the production server directly, okay, which is maybe an okay thing to do, or you could go to your development machine, make changes, test those, commit them, push them up to the remote repository, go to your console here, open up your console again. Remember, your console is here. Open up your console and then pull the changes from the remote. Okay, so that's how you could change your code, right? So let's go back to web. And then, of course, if you change your code, the production server is still using the one from the last time you reloaded it. So how do you get it to reload? You click reload. Now it's not going to like this. Okay. Well, we got a little bit farther than we usually get. Sometimes you can get an error right here. All right. We got this far. So we should be able to go to trainerk pythonanywhere.com. Okay, this looks like a link that's going to go right to my server. Let's click on it. Something went wrong. Okay. Error code, unhandled exception. Maybe a bug in your code. Okay. Press place click as your web app page to ensure that there are no errors indicated there. Well, we didn't have any errors there. Well, the first thing that I think of is that I think that the settings file that holds a lot of the settings for my application, I think that is not being properly pointed to. This is what happens with mine. Well, how could I fix that? Well, let's look at how you can look at code here on your machine. You can just go to Files, okay, and you can find My First Block and click on that. That looks good. Okay, and if you look back at your documentation, you'll see that when we put in that Whisky configuration file on the about halfway down, there's a variable that we set for Django's settings module. Well, let me just pull it down and show it to you. We set Django settings module to mysite.settings. So it's expecting to find the settings.py file under the subdirectory mysite. Let's see if that's actually true. It turns out it's not true in the way that mine got created. Now, whether I used a different tool than you guys are using, it might be just fine for yours. So if I go down and I look and I click on the subdirectory mysite, there's no settings.py. Well, that's not going to work. It's got to find the settings file. So what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to go back. I can just use the back button, I think, Yeah. And let's see, where could it be? Well, my other directories are blog and Django girls. I happen to know it's in Django girls. So I'm going to click on Django girls. Okay, and I have a settings.py. Well, that looks good. Let's click on that. Okay, and this looks like it. Yeah, this is the settings.py. Okay, how can we fix this? Well, where did we point to the settings.py file? Well, we pointed to the settings.py file in this Whisky configuration file. Some people say Whisky, by the way. And so instead of my site settings, it should have been Django girls settings. Okay, that'll help us to fix things. Okay, now, where do we fix that? Well, I'm just going to fix this right here. Where we did the web configuration. Okay, we're changing that file right here on the server. So let's go back. Let's back up with the back button. Let's go to the web tab. Here are our configurations. Okay. And we've got Whisky configuration file. Oh, let's just click on that. Yeah, this is the code that we put here. But instead of my site settings, mine, just the way that my Django directories got configured, mine should be Django girls .settings. And I'm going to save. Okay. Now I'm able to back up with the back button. Okay. Now can I just go test it now? No, I've got to reload. So let's reload. It's doing some thinking. That looks okay. And here's the link up here to the page for the application. Let's click on that. Oh, it didn't work. Well, that's not good. So let's go look at this. Let's see. There was a GET. There was a request to for the page. It was a HTTP GET request. We're going to learn all about those. Okay. To trainerk.pythonanywhere.com. And it says exception type disallowed host, invalid HTTP host header, trainerk.pythonanywhere.com. You may need to add trainerk.pythonanywhere.com to allowed hosts. Well, where is allowed host? Allowed host is a variable that we're going to learn about in the course, and it's in that settings file. And it says only allow requests to come from certain hosts. And the list doesn't include trainerk.pythonanywhere.com. Okay, now where could we change this? Okay, we could change this in a couple of places. Okay. First of all, we're going to want to add this string to a list when we find it. Okay, so let's go find it. Okay. Let's go back to the Files tab. Remember, it's all under my first blog. Remember, the settings file that we're using is under Django girls. Okay, now we can click on settings.py. Okay, and let's find allowed hosts. Now, I've had this problem a number of times, so I happen to know it's here on line 28. So all that mine says so far is that 127.0.0.1 is the name of the server on your own local machine. There's an alias for it called localhost. So it's only going to work when we're running the server on our own machine. Well, that's the development server. Well, we've got to add that string trainerk.pythonanywhere.com to this list. This is a plain old Python list. Okay, do I do it here? Well, I say no. Okay, and I'll tell you why. I don't do it here on the production server because I want to make sure that I change the code ongoing and in the repository. Okay, if you change the code here, then you're going to have to get out into the console and you're going to have to commit your change to the local repository. Okay, and then you're going to have to push that to the remote repository. And then eventually when you get back to your development machine, you're going to have to pull that down. Do you really want to work that hard? I don't. So I want to make this change, but I want to make it on my development machine, and I want to push it up to the remote and pull it down to the server. Okay? You can do it either way. For me, I don't make code changes on the production server. I make them on the development machine. Okay? Call me compulsive, but that's what works for me. So I'm going to need to go change the code. So I'm going to do this. So I'm going to fire up PyCharm. And here it is here on my other monitor. So I'll bring it over here. Okay, and Django Girls is what I'm calling this project here on my machine. And it's open. Okay, so that's good. Now, can I find the file that I want to change? Well, I was actually pointing to it there. Well, it's in the Django Girls subdirectory. It's called settings.py. Let's open it. Okay. Allowed host is still on 28. Okay, and this is a list, so comma separated. And these are strings, so we're going to put it in apostrophes, single quotes, if you will. And we want to allow the host trainerk.pythonanywhere.com. Okay. All right, that sounds good. So we're going to make sure this is saved with Command S, even though I don't really have to. Now, am I just going to commit this and push it? Well, a certain how can I say this? It's a lackadaisical thing to do. Is it tested yet? No, it's not tested on my local server. So how could I test it? Well, I could go up and start up. I could say I want to run manage.py. On manage.py, I could tell it to run server. Enter, enter. Okay, and now I'm going to click on that link. Yeah, it seemed to fire up just fine. So here, I haven't broken anything on the development server. Okay, now this is not something that's likely to break the development server, but I don't know. This is a good habit to have. Okay, so not broken on the development server. Okay, let's commit the change. Okay, how do I commit the change? Well, I can go up here, go up to VCS, VCS operations pop up. Then I can say commit. Okay, and I want to say change allowed hosts in settings settings.py to include, this would be trainer k dot python anywhere.com. And then I put a period at the end of that after a space. Well, there's a good commit message. So click on commit. That's committed. Okay, now where is it now? It's just committed to our local repository. Is it up at the, have I pushed it to the remote repository? No, I haven't. Okay. How do I do that? Well, I can go up to say VCS operations pop up. You can use the shortcut key. I usually use that, but and there's a push. So let's say push, and it's showing us what commits are going to be included in the push. That's right. So yeah, click the button for push, and watch the lower right here. Push successful. Push one commit. That looks like what we want. All right. So now, where's that change? Is it on our production server yet? Nope, it's not. Okay, let's get back to our production server and look. Okay. Where were we? I think we were in. Nope. Nope. Oh, wow. It looks like I closed the connection to my production server. Well, that's not good. So I'm going to go back. pythonanywhere.com. Okay, and it logged me in. So where was I? So let's go to files. And let's see if that change is up here. It's not, but I just want to prove that it's not. So go to my first blog, and it's under the Django Girls subdirectory, and it's settings.py. And look down on line 28, and you'll see, oh, well, we still have the old code. Well, it's still the old code because we need to pull the updates. We need to pull any commits that have been made to the remote repository down to the local repository that we have on the production server. Well, how can we do that? Well, the way that we typically do it is we get into our console. So let's back up and go down to our console. So here's our console. Okay, here's what it's called. We go back to it, and it seems to be in the directory My First Blog. It's within our virtual environment. Everything's fine. So what is the git command to pull changes from the remote? Well, we're going to say git pull origin. Sorry, not get. Git pull origin. And the changes have come down. Okay, so this kind of way, I mean, could we make changes here on the production server and then at the command line say we want to push them up to the remote? Yeah, we can certainly make changes and commit them and push them. For me, it helps me more to have this be a one-way street. So I change code on my development machine. I commit it, I push it, and the only thing I do here on the production server to code is I pull it from the remote repository. Now that helps me quite a bit. Your mileage may vary. So let's go back. Use the back button. Let's go back and confirm that that's actually changed. So go to Files and My First Blog and Django Girls and settings.py and line 28. There it is. There's our code that's been added. Now, That's probably a good change. I mean, if there had been some kind of a syntax error here, it would have blown up when we tested it on the development server. Okay, so it's just a question of whether I spelled it right, and I think I did. So, okay, let's back up. Let's go to web. Okay, can we test it? No, this is a production server. You have to reload it every time you make a change. So let's reload it. That's good. And here's the URL for our app. Let's click on it. Yes, that works. Okay, but we don't have any entries in the blog. Let's think about that. We don't have any entries in the blog. Oh, that's because we migrated the schema for the database. We didn't bring over any of the data. So we have a pristine copy of the Django Girls blog. Well, what do we have to do to post in the blog? Well, we need authorization. Well, you'll remember that just as we were doing on the development machine, to do that, we have to take our URL for our application and add /admin. Okay, and it's going to allow us to log in. And what's it going to use? Well, it's going to use the only user we have so far is the one that we created when we built this environment. We did a create superuser, and I called my superuser trainer K. And you'll remember my password was SOS secret. And I'm not going to save all these things right now. Oh, that's not looking good. Didn't work. SOS secret. Mine did not work. Well, that's not good. Apparently, I did not call it the right thing. Okay, so how can I get myself out of this mess? Well, I can. Okay, how can I do this? Well, it's back to our machine at Python Anywhere. So let's go back to Python Anywhere. And we're logged in. Okay. And for some reason, when I created the superuser, I either forgot the user ID that I used or I forgot the password. Okay, so what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to create another superuser. Well, how could I do that? Well, go back to consoles. Okay. And go to my bash console. Okay, here we are. We're right down there. And what did we do to create a superuser to start? Okay, and I look back up in my Django Girls blog tutorial, and it looks like I typed in Python manage py create superuser. So let's do that. Well, let's try it here. Python manage py create superuser, all one word. Username, let's call this test user, and I'm going to give it one of my email addresses because it I just want a real email address in there. Password, okay. Is this uppercase or lowercase? Okay, lowercase. I'm going to call it SOIS S-E-C-R-E-T, SOS secret, and then S-O-I-S-S-E-C-R-E-T, again. Super user created successfully. So I should have another super user, and then we should be able to go find out what I did wrong. Okay. So I can back out of my console. Okay. And now I ought to be able to go back to my machine. I'm sorry, not my machine. I should be able to go back to the application. And what's the URL for that? Well, it's trainerk.pythonanywhere.com. And let's add /admin. Okay, and let's try test user, and let's try SOS secret. Let's hope this works. It did work. Okay, so I must have had some kind of a typo problem before. So while we're in Django administrations, let's look at the users. And I've got trainer K in here. They do have staff status. He is a super user, but somehow I seem to have messed up the password. Well, what could I do? Could I change the password? Actually, I can. So I can go in here, click on trainer K. And it says, "Oh, I can change the password with this form." Okay. So what do I want? Well, I want my lowercase SOIS, SOISSECRET, and do it again. SOISSECRET. Do that, and say we want to change the password, and that I don't want to update and all that kind of stuff. That's good. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to log out. So how can I log out? Well, up here in the upper right, I can log out, and let's see if I've got this properly fixed. So let's go up to our URL and take it back to the URL plus admin and see if trainer K can sign in now with SOS secret. Can he? Well, I don't know what we did wrong before, but I can now. Okay. So then, again, this is a kludgy way to control access, but we've only got so much time in the Django Girls tutorial, so we're using it. Okay, so let's get the admin off of the URL and go back to the main page. And you can see from the plus over here in the right that I can add a blog. Now, I just want to point out here at this point that I have deployed my final version of the Django Girls tutorial. So is it possible that you don't have all these features in yours yet? I think you've done Django admin already, so I think you've got that feature. But I may have features that you don't have. Okay, that's fine. Okay, you'll have them by the end. So I click on plus. Let's really click on plus, title, and I could say welcome to, and then the course I'm teaching this semester, INFOST 691, Advanced Web Development using application frameworks. And I'm going to say, hi all, we finally made it. Best from Kevin. And we can save. Okay. And there we go. And in this version of the this application, maybe even the final version, how do you get back to the main page? You come up and you click on Django Girl's blog in the header. Okay, and then how do you log out? Well, if you want to log out to this, you have to go back to admin, and you can say you want to log out. And then if you go back to just the main URL, you'll see you're not logged in anymore. Okay, so that's really the end of this introduction. Since we're not doing a workshop where we have a lot of people walking around, and since there might be little things about the way you did your application, they're not just going to be perfect when you go to deploy. As you can see, there were two things about mine that weren't perfect, and also I somehow messed up the password of my super user. You have to be ready to bob and weave and to recover. And the best way to really allow you to do that is to show you what it's like for me to bob and weave on these things and recover. So good luck. When you've deployed this, okay, the only thing that you need to do is you need to go into your activity to submit your work and somehow say, I've deployed my application and here's the user ID that I used. Now, do you submit a document to do that? Sure, you can. Can you do that with a comment? We're using D2L. I forget whether you can do that with a comment. But that's all I'm going to need. I'm going to need that you're ready to have, I'm going to need to know that you're ready to have migrated and what's the user ID that you used. Ideally, it's the one from school. Okay, good luck. Have fun. See you later.